We are live. Nick Ripplinger, tell us who you are and what you do.
Yeah. Good morning, brother. How are you?
Great, man.
Yeah. So Nick Ripplinger, I'm the president of Battle Site. We are a rapid development and commercialization arm, fully dedicated to supporting the warfighter and making their mission safer, simpler, and more lethal.
Bam. Looking painless, right? Where are you located?
Yeah, we're located here in Dayton, Ohio, just right outside of Wright-Patterson, kind of in the Innovation District of Ohio.
Yeah. So, and you're from there, born and raised, right?
Yeah, I grew up just south of here. Loved it here. Ended up moving back after my time in the Army was over, and just kind of found my way into creating Battle Site with some amazing co-founders, and kind of running 1,000 miles an hour ever since.
Oh my God, that's the truth, right? So what did you do in the Army? What was your give me your background in the Army, and then even like where you deployed and what just stuff you did, highlights.
Yeah, so in the Army, I got super fortunate. I ended up my career running the Protective Service Detail as the Ops and COIC for NATO's Protective Service Detail out of Stuttgart, Germany. Hands down, one of the best jobs in the world. Really kind of, really got that exposure to those high level, combatant commanders who are making those, real-time war decisions. And just, kind of getting to be a fly on the wall there really kind of opened up my eyes to the whole, geopolitical stuff that I believe is probably the most fundamental piece of knowledge I was able to bring forward here at Battle Site.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, yeah, that definitely helped you leadership wise for sure. You probably had some mentors that were
mentors that would be impossible to get in the room with nowadays. So just super fortunate to be at the right place at the right time and be able to land that job.
Yeah, absolutely. Talk to me about your book too, which I have back here. Shameless product placement, everyone. But just tell me what spurred that.
Yeah, that book was full disclosure, man. It was written out of frustration. It's completely burnt out in corporate America. I did all the check boxes of going to school, getting a master's degree and all that to, climb that corporate ladder. And I never found myself referencing remember in economics 205 or whatever it was. It was always, pulling from my military experience. So the book's kind of chopped up into, 2 parts per chapter, quick little funny, we try to keep it funny at least, story from my time in the military and how it can be applied to business. And it was really, written for those transitioning soldiers and, service members. My transition was terrible, mostly of my own doing. It wasn't planned for, it wasn't thought out. There was no contingency plan, A, B, C. So just kind of, winged it. And it was a very rocky 18 months post-military, but, trying to just, prevent, fellow brothers and sisters from having to, go through those same challenges.
It's a struggle.
It is.
Yeah, I transitioned twice, and it was second time was better, but the first time was horrific. It was awful. In the 90s too. Oh, so God. But with you, even in the 2000s, 2010s, right?
Yeah.
With TAPS and even all the stuff, it was way better. Because the second time I got out was in 2003. So it was way better. And I saw people getting out better prepared, but it's I don't know what to do to make that program better other than to hand off folks to mentors and whatnot, and people that know.
And I won't lie, they've rolled out this new program, the DoD Skill Bridge program, and that's been, phenomenal. I mean, helping transition vets is a huge passion project of mine. I really only spend, time on, cancer and veterans and business and that type of stuff. But that Skill Bridge program has been fantastic, right? You're taking a service member, out of service 6 months, up to 6 months prior. You're dropping them into a business. They're really getting to hone those civilian skills that are needed to be successful while still, having the security of their military paycheck. And I can't put stomp enough about how important that is. And we've done 4 or 5 of them now here at Battle Site. We've hired 2. We still mentor one who went out on his own and started his own business. And it's, the other guy decided to go to the police academy. So in my opinion, it's got a 100% success rate with stuff that we've been able to, help these transitioning veterans, and also the value they bring to the table, with us being so warfighter driven that we never take on a project without the voice of the warfighter. And now we have, a bench of warfighters here at Battle Site that, recent relevant experience that really helps drive the innovation cycle.
There's only two people that aren't veterans, right? And they're veteran adjacent, both of them, aren't they?
Yeah. So Chris was a Air Force brat when he was growing up for a little while. And then Sunny, our director of program, she spent, 15 years working for the Air Force before we were able to snatch her up.
Yeah. Steal her. Yeah. That was probably the best thing you ever did.
The best hires I've ever made in my career, military, post-military, and at Battle Site.
Yeah, for sure. So, okay. So Battle Site, people ask me all the time, what is Battle Site? Like they hear the name and, people assume things, but give us a few things that you actually make.
Like product wise?
Yeah. Product wise. Delve into the products that you want to talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. So the long and short of it, we got a pipeline of about 30 different products right now in various stages of development. We have 4 that are fully commercialized and fielded. So what really got our start at Battle Site was our Craytac product line. So it's an infrared crayon. Like the military people will get it, I hope. But if you think of like an IR chem light you can write with, so it gives you, 2,000 linear feet of writing. You write on any hard surface, it lights up in the infrared spectrum so you can see it with night vision goggles and sensors. And really, it's taking that static 6-inch piece of plastic and turning it into a dynamic communication tool to really, this is more on the safer side of, our mission statement, but allowing, these warfighters to communicate dynamically in those low light, no light situations, usually in, the chaos of war.
Yeah. Infrared crayon, basically a chem light you can write with.
Yeah. That's probably.
And for you Marines out there, it tastes like mint.
I'll have to take your word on that one.
Just saying. Anyway, shit. If you know, right?
Yeah.
That's one of those statements. So, so Craytac, and that so when did you start the company?
Yeah, this was back in 2017, believe it or not. Feels like a lifetime ago.
It does feel like a lifetime ago.
20 minutes ago at the same time.
That, bro. Can you believe it's like 8 years? Almost, well, going on 8 years. That's insane.
Like 3 months away from 8 years.
Doesn't even make sense. Doesn't even make sense.
I think like the one thing we did really well when we started doing the rollout of Craytac and, engaging with end users, trying to find out their sore spots. My favorite question to ask when we're in the field, which are always my favorite days at the office, is, what sucks about your job? And we take that back and we kind of war game it here in the office and, try to see, is there a way that we can solve that problem with the product? And when we were doing that discovery with Craytac, friend-foe identification is always a challenge in the chaos of war. And glint tape, though it serves a purpose, is not ideal. So we were able to develop a IR photoluminescent. So if you think of like the stars on kids' ceilings, they soak in light energy all day and they glow in the dark and, keep kids happy in bed. We found a way that we can charge, our photoluminescent material in about 15 minutes, and it'll give you a full night cycle of duration glowing in the infrared. So now we have an active signal that doesn't require to be, hit with a spot or, hit the moon right to reflect back that IR light. And we've been super fortunate. We haven't found anything that a customer's asked for that we can't put that powder into. So we've done, an edge repelling system. We've done a medic pack, paints, films, epoxies, and shoulder patches are kind of the big, easy.
And that's called Cold Fire, right?
Yeah, Cold Fire. So super fun technology. It's really, the core technology is one thing, but it can be productized into, probably 20, 30 different things all on its own.
Yeah, for me, the biggest thing with that is, and as a, door kicker back in the day, is that you don't need external sources for it to light up. You don't need like glint tape, like you said. You either needed the IR strobe or you needed a flashlight or all that type of stuff. Or even with night vision, not the night vision now, but the night vision before, it was all ambient light, right? And so the fact that it creates its own, that's what's cool about Craytac too, is they can be used independently of power or whatever. The only power you actually need for cold fire is the sun. At some point during the day, right? So
or you think about like your kit sitting in your chew or whatever, like all that, it's going to soak up all the light. It's just definitely a little more efficient in the UV light, and that was the big thing, right? One of our core values here at Battle Sight is as simple as possible. So the crown, pretty simple. The chemistry is complex, and that's a whole other story, but like what you're delivering to the warfighter is like, oh, I write with this and it lights up. Yeah, like training complete.
Right.
The patches, right? You put this on, it'll soak up light throughout the day, and it's going to give you an active near IR signature on the mission. So try to keep everything as dummy proofed as possible here.
Yeah, for sure.
It's like, as hard as we trained in the military and we developed that muscle memory, if it's one less thing you have to train on, it frees up that time and that mental capacity to go train on something else, and really just in a very roundabout way kind of potentially delivers more capabilities to those warfighters.
Yeah, for sure. So switch. Go ahead. Keep going.
I got like one more cool story. I think I just mentioned, we love working with the end users, and I think in the last couple of years we've seen a big shift in like DoD's mindset of like, we don't need big defense telling us what we need. We don't need, senior level people telling us what we need. We really need the men and women in the trenches and who are going out on these missions to drive what we need. So we got super fortunate to get linked up with an Air Force SEER guy. He called us up and was like, hey guys, I've got this idea. Can you guys build me like 6 prototypes? He had a little bit of money. It wasn't anything exciting, but we love this customer and we love this career field and we work with them closely. So it made perfect sense for us to take it up. So we matched, the funding he brought to the table with our IRAD dollars, our internal R&D dollars. And we started building this and testing it. And we're like, man, this is like pretty slick. Like this is kind of a game changer. So we were able to go find additional funds through the Air Force SBIR program to really,
So SBIR, do you know what it stands for?
Small Business Innovative Research.
Perfect. Because I'm glad you knew. I had the small business and the research, but I couldn't remember the I. But anyway.
Yeah. So that was really like the fuel to this fire. And so we got that funding in. We developed it. I don't know. I think we're up to like 45 different tests now of the product. Well, basically, it's a C streamer that replaces the IRC die in the ejection seat kit. So 3 panels, you can rearrange them. It's got some technology built into it that allows us to see it from space and other assets. But the cool thing about this, and something that we really pride ourselves on here at Battle Sight, is from the time of that first phone call that we had when we agreed to match his funding, all the way to the first flight we had on an F-22 and fully approved and everything documented and updated, was 14 months. And I just like, that's the speed that our government and our small businesses and our university partners and everybody who supports the warfighter, like those are the type of cycle times I think we need to be executing on right now versus the, we'll deliver
years,
20 and 25 years or whatever it is.
Yeah, absolutely. Agreed. What kind of, what started your whole journey into entrepreneurship? Like what was the spark? What was the first thing? Was Battle Sight your first thing? Or
I mean, I did the book before Battle Sight, and that led to some speaking gigs and some training and whatnot.
But why entrepreneurship in general?
Honestly, just out of frustration. Like I wrote the book when I was at a very large defense contracting company, and it was so hard and so political. I was like, it just doesn't have to be this hard, guys. I was super fortunate to get recruited to a small business and, helped, on the deal side of that, we sold that to private equity. And like the day we were popping bottles of champagne and everything's done and everybody can breathe easy, I was like, man, I'm not fulfilled. And I was like, I'm not sure what I'm going to do next, but like, I know it's going to be tied in with defense, specifically with the war fighters, not, bureaucrats in some offices. I knew I wanted to hire veterans. I just had no clue what the product idea was. And that's when we linked up with the Air Force Research Labs here in Dayton. And we were able to, find the underlying technology that eventually went on to become Craytac.
Awesome. So that last product you were talking about is ARMS, right?
Yeah, ARMS, the advanced, sorry, I got to figure out how to spell ARMS.
Too many acronyms, bro.
Advanced Rescue Maritime Streamer.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, I'm super proud to say that's flying in F-35s right now, F-22s, and
cool.
Keep looking for more ways to bring this capability to the warfighter, because it really does drastically increase the search altitude. Whereas right now we're flying around in helos and C-130s, 300 to 500 feet. You're not covering that much water, and water is moving. The aircraft are moving. It's, very hard to coordinate that search versus can we pinpoint, an isolated person from space and then read the message that they configured. And especially if you have multiple isolated persons in the water type situation. If you think like Indo-Pacific right now, like it's just a whole nother capability that you can now plan, and just another data point for, those PJs or those soft guys that are going to go out and rescue that isolated person.
Yeah, I couldn't imagine being adrift in like the Pacific, let alone any other body of water. But
one life rafts here in the shop, and we put one of our friends in it out just on a very small lake here in Dayton for testing. I was like, man, like 30 minutes, I'd be done. Like,
could you imagine not being able to see anything for all the way around you, 360 degrees, and you're just, nope.
Yeah,
I'm all set. Did that shit.
You know how like angry the ocean can get, right?
Dude, I remember just spinning and actually getting seasick.
Yeah,
because that's how big those swells are and stuff sometimes. Just crazy.
To do some testing off the Sea of Japan and supported a bunch of other tests out in the open water. I'm just like, this is not for me, man. Like, more power to these men and women that are putting themselves in this situation. Like,
yeah. So you touched on SkillBridge, but I want you to also touch on some things like you as a veteran entrepreneur when you started heading down this journey. What were the biggest? Because a lot of veterans listen to this.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, I want to give them nuggets to, for somebody that's, doing it. Let's put it that way, right? Doing it. So, what are some tools that you would suggest to them, like getting involved in organizations and whatnot?
Yeah, I think, kind of back to like that whole the transition from, fairly decent paying job in corporate America to entrepreneurship is, equally as hard. Luckily, I was a little bit smarter and had somewhat of a plan, but, nothing ever goes as planned.
No. Right.
But I think the biggest thing is like, you have to find your community, and you have to find, those brothers and sisters that are in the entrepreneur trenches with you now, the same way you had in the battlefield. And for me, that was really, a couple key organizations. Number one being IVMF, the Institute for
Veterans and Military Families. I can remember that one.
I was just out there with them too last week. I hope none of them hear that I spaced on the acronym, but truly a great organization right out of the University of Syracuse. And it's honestly free training. I know the word free, gets a bunch of veterans like too good to be true. Like, how am I going to get got?
Or squeamish.
Yeah. But it was truly like free training, and that training, they have the EBV, the Entrepreneurship Bootcamp for Veterans program that really helped me launch BattleSight. They're kind of like the mine detector. If we're tying this back to the military, right? They're like, there's a mine over here that you don't even know about. Don't step on it. And so really, pulling from the experience of the participants in that and the instructors really, helped me avoid a lot of pitfalls. And then as we began to grow and we got some traction, we did the EBV Accelerate that had some like headcount and revenue requirements. And now it's all right. Now we're starting to grow. We're in this room with everybody else that's growing. And now the network just grew from, people launching businesses that I'm still in contact with to this day to, all of us trying to help each other grow, whether it's sharing a legal document or just, hey, I'm about to terminate an employee. I don't know what the hell I'm doing. Like, you get that network of peer mentors, really. And then, they do this annual conference every year. It's an absolute must make, in my opinion. I think I've missed it once in 7 years, and that's because somebody was getting married that weekend. But it is just an absolute network of, the veteran population is a pretty small population here in America. And then those of us that were crazy enough to go out on our own and start something is even smaller. So many of those barriers are knocked down, and 99% of us all want to see each other succeed. And if there's something I can do to help one of those people, or if there's something I need that somebody has that's willing to help, like, cannot put into words how impactful that was and how much it's probably avoided me like losing millions of dollars in years of my life.
Right. Absolutely. How oh goodness. I had the question right in my head. That's what happens, right?
That's life, brother.
It is life. Also you had so I'm thinking more local. You also had help with some folks in Dayton that really were instrumental too, right?
Yeah. So, starting a company, we were poor, we had no money. We actually started off in a co-working space. It was like $150 a month to be a member there, but it came with a free keg. I was like, well, me and my buddies, we didn't drink $150 worth of beer. Like, we're like net positive here. But that was like, that co-working space was ran by the Entrepreneur Center here in Dayton, a local nonprofit that just instrumental on, they have a CFO on staff that has office hours that we were able to be like, hey, dude, does this term sheet look right? Or should I do this from a financial standpoint? To, people who've exited multiple times that just volunteer their time there to help young growing businesses or young starting businesses at that point.
Right.
Then we finally upgraded to our own little broom closet in the building.
Literally.
Yeah. That expanded into the broom closet plus like the wet closet next to it, which then expanded into like the first floor kind of main office area. And then finally, we're here and outgrowing again, but for the first time, we're in a purpose-built facility that's really, improved the efficiencies and everything else that you have to focus on once you start getting some of that traction.
Yeah. And what you're doing, like, tell us real quick the history of that building. Just a real quick gloss, but it's freaking cool.
This building is amazing. So it sat vacant for about 40 years. Us and a phenomenal developer and another very innovative company here in Dayton kind of came together and had a vision to bring this building back to life. And we started doing the research on it. It was a GE facility that they did a lot of work on the Manhattan project. So we renamed it the Manhattan. We tried to keep everything as true as possible to the building. Like, obviously you had to code upgrades and stuff you had to do, but for the most part, it is just a raw, very rough exterior building with such cool history. And it's very easy to smile when you walk into this building every day.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Super cool. And they did a great job, man, because when I went through it, when it was before the renovation.
Yeah, like when homeless people are still living.
Like there was the
dead raccoon in the middle of the floor.
Remember that freaking closet where you open up the whatever it looked like? It looked like someplace where they would hold like ammunition back in the day, Yeah. And there's some homeless dude living in there. It's crazy. But so with that being said, though, that kind of explains in Dayton, where I'm at in Syracuse, we're part of what used to be called the Rust Belt.
Yep.
Right. And that it seems like we're on, and you being in manufacturing, I just wanted to get your take on this. It's and overall national security. I feel like we're on the cusp of manufacturing really truly coming back to the U.S.
I agree. And, people can argue about how we're going about it, and that's, a whole other conversation I don't really want to get into, but it
is what it is.
Manufacturing, at least here in Dayton, right, is a manufacturing town. GM used to produce a gazillion cars a year here or whatever it was. And all the, suppliers that supported those production lines. So Dayton's got all this capability, and it's kind of sat dormant for, a decade or two. And it definitely has a renewed spirit around like, hey, these jobs are coming back. All the high tech. I mean, Anduril just announced that they're building $1 billion facility in Columbus. Intel's building, I think, like a $5 billion facility in Columbus.
Yep.
Honda's doing a whole bunch of stuff up there with their batteries and EVs, and all those stuff that goes into those super cool chips and vehicles and whatever Anduril's building, and like they all have components and subcomponents. And all that is coming back to life right now, and it's absolutely fantastic, and super fortunate to play, a very small role in that here in Dayton.
Yeah, I mean, Dayton's a cool town. It kind of where it's situated too is like, you don't realize how central it is until you're there, and you realize, holy crap, you're an hour north. You're smack dab between two major metro areas.
Yeah, you've got Cincinnati an hour south, Columbus, an hour north. You've got Indianapolis an hour
not that far, right?
Nashville, Lexington, Louisville. Like you can get to all these places in like a few hours.
Yeah. It's cool.
Like suburbs and small town feel, but also you can get to.
And one of the big advantages is that you're right there with Wright-Patt.
Yeah.
So Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. Tell us about the relationship you've got there.
Yeah. So Wright-Patterson is maybe one of the weirdest Air Force bases for an Army guy to try to wrap his head around. So they've got, I might get these numbers wrong, but I think they've got 4 out of the 7 AFRL, the Air Force Research Lab director. It's headquartered here. So a ton of smart people working on, cutting edge, next generation, 10 generations from now type of technology and research. So massive brain power here in the community. They also support most of the PEOs for fighter bombers. We've got LCMC, the Life Cycle Management Center here. It's really kind of the belly button for the Air Force, which, is a massive economic driver for the community, but also very good access to, really smart people who are working on, some stuff they can't talk about, and some stuff is really cool stuff that they can't talk about that they're working on.
Right. For sure.
Really, it's the whole town, kind of talking.
Yeah, because also another relationship is with the University of Dayton.
Yeah, so we do a lot with the University of Dayton. I think they did like $500 million with DoD last year. Just crazy money, but delivering crazy capabilities as well. And I think, we got a little lazy during the GWAT days, the Global War on Terrorism days, Iraq, Afghanistan, because we controlled the air, we controlled most of the ground. It was really an insurgency war. And, we probably fell behind some of our peers on the development of technology that's going to be used in the future fight. But I think the one thing we learned in GWAT and definitely learned in World War II is just how fast America can rally when we're in that conflict. Ford stood up building airplanes, and, just the innovation that comes out of conflict is amazing. Like, I don't know if you remember when they were using those like garage door lasers to set up IEDs.
Yeah.
And I don't know who it is, but I like to think it was some brilliant private was like, why don't we just put a glow plug in the ammo can, make that heat signature, and we'll blow it up in front before it even gets close to the Humvee or MRAP. Just, simple things that have massive impacts. I put us up against anybody in the world on our speed to innovation.
Battle site, you mean?
No, as a country.
As a country.
Yeah.
Gotcha. No, I would agree.
We try to play in that space at battle site, try to solve those problems, but.
And that's what entrepreneurship's about, right? Solving problems.
Yeah, at the end of the day, we're just really good at solving problems.
Yeah, agreed, for sure. So, as a national security podcast, which involves all things, I try to convince people that national security is more than just, bullets and tanks and airplanes, right? It's everything.
And I think we're starting to see a lot of that in the supply chain, and I think that's why so much is coming back.
Yeah, so expand on that.
Yeah, so I think, we got a little too reliant on importing stuff to save a couple pennies on a part. And, that's definitely great from like a capitalism standpoint and how to increase margins and how to, drive value for shareholders and everything like that we're kind of built on. But I mean, I think really COVID was kind of the eye opener. Like when you shut things down, what a ripple effect, that one bolt that you got from overseas might have on, a whole, pipeline of, 20 steps further and you got an F-35 or something.
Yeah.
We should be buying bolts for F-35s overseas, but this is such a ripple effect. And I think, during those COVID years and definitely kind of now with what's going on is starting to look back and trace all these parts back and say, all right, we need to be making this stuff here.
Yeah, a lot of things, right? Yeah. I laugh every time I see this idea. It's supply chain stuff, right? Where they have like chickens that are grown here, raised here, slaughtered here, shipped to China for processing, and then shipped back.
I didn't even know we were doing that. That's crazy.
Right? It's insane. So, but I'm saying there's a lot of chicken processing going on here, but that was happening for certain things.
I think the big thing kind of with everything in the news now and, all the tariffs and all the discussions that, I won't even pretend like I can fully comprehend, but just the amount of stuff that we import. Like I knew we imported a lot, but when you start diving into the numbers and, if you can believe what you read and see sometimes, it's just astonishing how much we bring in.
Yeah. That literally like at one point, I don't think it is now, but at one point, Walmart's shelves were filled with something like 80% stuff from another country.
Yeah.
Yeah, or something like that. It's not that now, but at one point it got really bad. But
I think like I have no ties to Walmart, just to be clear before I say this, but they've done such a phenomenal job in the veteran community, at least. Of bringing not only just jobs to military and military spouses, but also trying to source, and they have an active campaign and a very large team trying to source veteran companies' products for their shelves.
Yeah, and Walmart does that. So does Amazon.
Yeah, Amazon also does an amazing job.
And they have military divisions, Amazon and Walmart.
Yeah,
where they completely cater, especially to like veteran-owned businesses and stuff too. It's pretty astonishing. But if you weren't in the veteran community, most veterans don't even know that. But once you get into the space, you understand. But I think we should see so many veterans running companies, and there's so many veteran-run companies that you just have no idea.
I think a lot of that is like, and we kind of do this a little bit too, is like Battlesight's a super innovative company solving problems, and that's what we try to focus on. We just also happen to be, veteran-owned and veteran-led. So I think there's a lot of people that always focus on the mission and kind of forget to tell that, personal side of the story as well.
Absolutely. Agreed. So being a national security podcast, what is your take on the future when it comes to innovation? What should we be looking at to effectively provide national security to the country more than it is now? And you can choose it all, or you can just go, totally specific on what you think.
I mean, I kind of feel like the world's kind of on a hair trigger right now. We're like one missile that's not on course away from some really bad things happening. And I think we have to be prepared for that. I kind of mentioned that earlier. Like, I feel like we kind of lost a little bit of footing during the GWAT days. I do think we're ramping that up. I do feel like there is a very big focus on catching up, and not just catching up, but surpassing, right? I feel like as veterans, right, we never want this generation of warfighters going into a fair fight. Like,
right, exactly.
Like, how do we give our guys the upper hand so we can, reduce casualties and destruction and everything along those lines? And I think there's been a big push. I think like throughout the DoD, like at least within like probably the last 4 years, it seems like there's been a big culture change of letting warfighters solve warfighter problems. And, I think the Air Force is doing a phenomenal job of that. And honestly, I think the Navy is doing a phenomenal job of actually taking those and transitioning them and scaling them up. And
that's something that's lost, actually. I don't mean to cut you off, but it's something that's been lost because of all the other political drama involved with the military.
No.
All that aside, it's actually something's got streamlined that were good.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the Army's doing those like call it X-Tech, those pitch competitions, and just
right.
Cash, go run, go figure it out. We don't need to spend a year going through contracts. And they're smaller dollars, but it's opening up that network that we were talking about in the beginning on the veteran side, but also on like the DoD side, like your customer side. If you're not serving DoD, you have to be super close to your customer, and you have to work with them to know what their challenges are, and pull that out so that you can try to be 2 or 3 steps ahead. We always talk about it kind of like we want to be ahead of the wave. Like if we're on top of the wave, we're already behind, and if we're behind the wave, we are screwed. Here at battle site. And the only way to do that is engage with your customers. And they're the ones out there doing the hard work of, planning for all these contingencies and what ifs, and knowing what that's going to look like, and knowing, the catalog of products they have to support that mission and where they're lacking. And on the innovation side, that's probably been the best thing we've ever done, is just truly invested in those relationships. But not only just invested in those relationships, but when we find something, go run 1,000,000 miles an hour and deliver that capability, under budget, ahead of schedule. And that's really, I think the most valuable thing we have at Battle Site, besides our employees, is that kind of brand recognition and name reputation that, hey, if you get stuck, call the Battle Site guys. They'll solve it under budget and before you actually need it.
Yeah. Freaking good idea, fairies.
Yeah. And like, we don't care where the good ideas come from, right? They're everywhere.
No, exactly. And that's the other thing. So it's an ego. The company doesn't run with a lot of ego, which is very cool to see in compared to so many of our counterparts, right? Some of these egos are so gigantic. It's insane.
And my favorite days here are like arguing, like, because we were all, I said we were like-hearted. None of us think the same. So we're not like-minded at all.
Yeah, right.
And absolutely. Like at the end of the day, if somebody's arguing, it's because they believe something could be done better or more efficient or whatever. And you're both arguing for the same end goal of the best result. And, there's no like shouting matches, or maybe argues is like too strong of a word, but the disagreements that, are everybody's rowing in the same direction.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, even if your heart's in a different, or your mind is in a different place, right?
Yeah, so, that's how you innovate, and
because if you have a whole bunch of people that think exactly the same,
yeah, you're going nowhere. Yeah, and something we really pride ourselves on is get to fail fast, right? I don't want to spend a week doing a paper study when we can go build something in a few hours, and if it needs to withstand being thrown against the wall, throw it against the wall. Like, did it break? Did it work?
Right. Yeah, for sure.
Just get those answers as fast as possible, because those answers are going to drive the next set of questions.
Yeah. The next question I have, just more of it is a question, but going towards things here with it's, veteran entrepreneurship, manufacturing and whatnot. How important are systems for you?
Systems, they are becoming very important. Full disclosure, we probably didn't do a great job in the beginning on systems, but we're kind of at that point where, the team's growing, the product line's growing, that we had to start systematizing things. And I think the best thing that we've done here is I've only wrote one of our systems, and that's our culture system. And we've empowered people who are in charge of things to write their own systems. And they're living documents, right? We adjust them as we learn things. Like, hey, this worked really well, I'm going to add it. Hey, this didn't work very well, I'm going to take it out. And just from like that continuity standpoint as well, it's been like a painful year-long process to try to get these in place, but it's been very, very effective. And I think it's really going to help us, grow over the next 24 months.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely level up.
That is the goal.
Yeah. So kind of wrapping things up. First off, what's the best place? Where's the best place for people to find you?
Yeah, battlesitetech.com. So SIGHT. Mine is just Nick at Battlesite Tech if you want to shoot me an email.
Right. Also, I mean, you were on the socials as well.
Oh yeah.
Nothing crazy, but some cool stuff too. So
yeah. So Dan, our director of technology, is like a part-time photographer, so he gets all the credit for our videos and everything. Really trying to ramp that game up. Just, when you're a physical products company and serving the warfighter, there's people, all around the world that might need your product. Is, kind of back to the core values things that we were talking about was, right, we want to show up with a product and we want to show the story, not tell the story. So instead of showing up with a PowerPoint of, hey, here's all the things we can do, it's like, boom, here it is. It might be ugly and crude, but go out and test it because the capability's there, and let us know how you want it packaged, and we'll, clean that up.
Which you've done with plenty of your every product, really.
Yeah. I mean, quick little story on Craytac. The first time we rolled it out to some PJs, they used it on a mission. They were searching like 150 cars, like at a junkyard, and there's certain things hidden in those cars that they were trying to, find and treat. So they started using Craytac. And so we get down to the debrief, and this old, like, salty captain, he's like, man, this really helped us communicate, let us know which vehicles were searched. Your applicator sucks. I would never carry this on a mission. And like, this is like, before we realized that, like, that voice of customer is so important at the beginning of the development stage, was really when this kind of, like, down the road, when we kind of triaged it, looked back, and then, like, that was the turning point. So we're like, hey, sir, like, if you like the product, why don't you help us design a package, or like talk through what you would want it packaged as, that you would want to carry it on mission if it's actually doing all the, mission essential stuff that you were hoping it would do.
Right.
And that's, how we ended up with our current applicator, and all the little nuances with that was really just working directly with those warfighters to make sure it met their needs.
Yeah. And that's amazing. I mean, and that's what it's all about, right?
And we're doing a redesign on our beacon right now because they love the capability of it, and they hate that it's handheld. They want it to be, flat, potentially helmet mounted. All right, That's super easy, right? We've proven all the core technology. This is just a mechanical engineering, not even a real challenge. It's just a redesign, right?
Yeah.
Put the components in a puck looking thing instead of a water bottle looking thing.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, it's pretty cool. Any last words?
No, I think just, anybody that's following the national security type time, everything that's going on in the world, right? There's a lot to be following. Just keep up on it. And,
and it's not just the military.
It's not just the military. It just happens to be where we focus. But I think, with all the chaos that's going on, it leads to so much opportunity. So whether you're an entrepreneur or, in a business or doing your own thing, just, always keep your eyes open during this time, because chaos truly does bring opportunity.
Yeah. Solve problems.
Yeah. You're a good problem solver. You'll probably go far in this world.
Maybe. All right. Appreciate it, Nick.
Absolutely. Thanks, Bennett.
Yeah, man. Take care.
You too.